everyone, and welcome to Skytale Insights. Very excited about today's episode as we're going to be walking through demographic shifts over time with Audrey Neff. Audrey is Director of Marketing at PatientNow. She also, among other things, speaks internationally, is a peer-reviewed author, and a podcast host. Audrey, I know everyone knows you, but just in case someone doesn't, can you do a quick intro on yourself, whatever you want to share, and we'll get right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, Ben, I am so pumped to be here. So first of all, thank you times a million for having me. Very, very excited to be on this podcast. But yeah, so for those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Audrey Neff. I'm the Director of Marketing for PatientNow. I've been in this industry almost a decade now, which is insane to think about. I actually landed in this industry when I was between 22 and 23 years old. So I think 2025 will be my 10-year anniversary in the medical aesthetics vertical. It's become an industry I will never, ever, ever leave. They'll be dragging my dead body out of it for sure. So I am super excited to be on this podcast. From industry side, as you mentioned, I'm the Director of Marketing for the PatientNow portfolio. So we're actually PE backed now. It's actually been great. We've been doing a lot of M&A over the last several years. So we have a couple of different brands under our belt. We have 2 different EMR softwares. Actually, one is launching this month, which we're very excited about. We own the RX Photo platform as well, which is iPhone, iPad, a before and photo management app, and then we have a digital marketing agency as well. But beyond that, I also invest a lot of my time, energy, and effort in the industry, speaking and educating and training and all of these amazing things on the business side of aesthetics. So I'm just very excited to be here on this podcast. I know we're going to have an awesome time. Ben, very grateful that we crossed paths this year, and I'm just pumped to be here. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Yeah, I'm grateful that we met this year, got to know each other better. I saw you, I think, at every conference. As you mentioned, you certainly do give back to the space and the industry. And we should replay this in 2025 as
Yes.
I wish you a happy 10-year
Yeah.
in the space. That's exciting. And like you, I don't think I'll ever leave. But, this subject, demographics, is one of the exciting ones for us. So I'm personally very excited for today. Why? One of the questions we're often asked from investors or even within our own team as we try to project forward, we love numbers, we love statistics, is why is this space so interesting? Why is it so popular? Why is it so hot? Because it's been around.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people are just now realizing that we're around.
Yes.
And you can go through a list of why this is exciting, but one of the main reasons, because depending on what study you read, over the next decade or so, we should be growing as an industry 15 to 18% a year, CAGR. That's tremendous. That's tremendous growth. So a lot of times we get the question as to why. And demographics is a very, very big part of that. So really excited that, I maybe know 1% of what you do. So with that, can we maybe start historically, bring us to the present on what has happened today? Because I think that's shifted a lot, and then we'll talk from there.
Yeah, definitely. And to just build on something you said, the market size is growing exponentially, double digits. You don't see that in a lot of industries, right, consistently over time. And so if we go back, if we rewind a little bit, even 10 years ago, let's say, before millennials had full purchasing power, and obviously we'll jump into that later in this episode, I know, in detail, the people that are now in the Gen X consumer group and the Boomers consumer group, right? So if we go back to when aesthetic treatments, started coming out, I still remember like the commercial with, I think Brooke Shields was like the spokesperson for like Juvederm, like nobody will notice, or everyone will notice, but nobody will know. Like I remember I was a child sitting on the couch, like watching that commercial. But if we go back into those days, the marketing even from the manufacturer standpoint, like if we take that example, for example, with Juvederm, was you don't want people to know, right? So it was a very hush-hush time. Susan, the neighbor, didn't want her, friend down the street, Karen, to know that she ever had some type of injectables, Botox, whatever it may be. So because of that, because at that time people were very quiet and conservative about aesthetic treatments, it was growing slower, let's say. Now, fast forward to, we're in 2024 now, but, one of the major drivers of growth in this industry are the millennial generation of consumers. And if we look at the market size as it sits today in terms of generational aesthetics, let's call it. So Gen X, because they started aesthetic treatments years and years and years ago, they hold in the North America market specifically, they hold around 41%. So majority of market share. However, beginning 2 years ago, their market share is not going to be increasing anymore. So they've kind of already hit the peak of market share in terms of consuming aesthetic treatments, and that 41% is going to be decreasing. We also have boomers, which have, back in 2021, 24% of the North America market share. Also, they already hit their peak, and they were kind of slow to the game too, since aesthetics didn't really become super innovated until maybe, let's say, Gen X was kind of in the middle of that movement. Market share also decreasing. So if we look back on millennials now, and this is why I'm just so passionate about talking about this generation, is they actually only hold 21%, 22% of the North America market share. And out of those three consumer groups, so you have boomers, you have Gen X, and you have millennials. And to preface even more, those are the only three groups that have full purchasing power right now. So people talk about Gen Z, and Gen Z is great, and I know we'll get into Gen Z today, but they just don't have full purchasing power. So before we kind of get hyper-focused on just throwing ourselves and throwing our marketing efforts only at Gen Z, we can't neglect millennials, because while they only have 23% of the market share in North America, they are expected to increase market share moving forward. So in terms of those three that have full purchasing power, millennials are the only one expected to increase market share. And this is actually data from Allergan. Less than 10% of the total addressable market for just facial injectables has even been tapped into. I think it's around like 7.5% of the total addressable market for just injectables alone have received treatment, which means over 90% of that addressable market has still been untouched. So these people are contemplating getting aesthetic treatments, but they haven't made that move yet, that shift yet, that decision to, yes, I'm going to go do this. And to just build on that more, and I could talk about this forever, but because the market is so underpenetrated overall, and because millennials are the only consumer group within that total addressable market that will be increasing market share and that have full purchasing power, it's going to be a driver for global growth, not just growth in the North America aesthetic market, but growth in the European market, the Asia market, all of these other markets, because while there are a lot of factors that are driving growth, millennials are going to be a huge, huge driver, fueling, no doubt, the future of, this $18 billion global industry and growing.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And it's interesting when you talk about saturation. I do think that people in the space, you touched on it. I think everyone now wants to be in aesthetics, et cetera. So it could feel saturated. I could see why people see that. However, it's antithetical when you look at the reports that we just mentioned that are talking about the 15 to 18% growth over the next decade or so. And we're talking about, when you talked about the history, it was fascinating listening to it. I need to go back and watch that Brooke Shields commercial, by the way. But it's interesting that it's gone from that to hush hush to now it's accepted. The demographics are opening up. You even brought up Gen Z a little bit. So a lot of potential for growth, and you don't get to that kind of growth with saturation. I mean, just for example, we study all of healthcare, and you can look at dental, for example, and every year it grows, but it grows at a glacial pace. It's about 3.5% growth. Like typically the way I think about it is like normal inflation. That's how it grows. When you're talking about 15 to 18% growth, that does not happen. It certainly doesn't happen in a market that's saturated. So it's exciting to hear about millennials and that they'll be the kind of current and future drivers. The other two you mentioned kind of decrease in market share. So how should I think about a millennial then? Like, if they're the ones that are going to be the driver, obviously I want to hyper-focus on that. All of my patients, obviously, but I want to hyper-focus on, okay, if this is going to be the short, medium future of aesthetics, who are they? How should I think about them? What's their avatar?
Yeah, I first of all, I love that question. So if we want to talk about, let's just talk about the age range first, just so everyone understands, because I think still a lot of people, they just assume millennials are like these mid-20-year-olds that are not brand loyal. They have all these negative stigmas. I mean, I remember years ago, for our fellow millennial listeners, there was like this horrible joke going around that millennials will never be able to afford a mortgage because they buy too much avocado toast or something like that. It didn't make any sense to me, but they've just always had like the worst stigmas attached to them. And I'm a millennial. Like I'm actually in the younger cohort of the millennial age range, which is, just so everyone is aware, it's actually 27 to 42. So I think that there's kind of the older cohort and then the younger. But if we look at that generation, okay, so as a whole, as we talked about, 22% of market share, they're going to be increasing. Unlike Gen X and boomers, they come with a lot of unique nuances. If we look at millennials, so definitely they are unique. If we look at core values of millennials, and I think this is something a lot of us should keep in mind because we should always go back to it when it comes to how we treat them, how we transact with them, how we speak to them, how we market to them, how we retain them. All these core values are things that should always be top of mind. So one of the first ones is going to be choices, right? And not that other generations don't want to have choices and don't do their due diligence. I think because millennials grew up in the age of technology, you know, we have phones, the internet, social media, all of these resources at our fingertips. And if we put a positive spin on it, they are actually an extremely highly educated group of consumers because of the internet. So choices is one of the huge values that they have. They want to make the choice themselves, right? They will do their due diligence. They will research providers. We could go into that. And another core value of them is convenience, right? And I think we would all agree with this, you know, fellow millennials who are listening. They just want things to be easy. So convenience is another value. Authenticity, huge. And that really goes hand in hand with another one, which is relatability. I kind of always bundle those together. So we have choices, convenience, authenticity, and relatability. So, and I'm going to bundle these two together, but millennials know when they're being sold. So if we go down the avenue of selling, and obviously in this industry, since it's cash pay medicine, we're selling at every single touch point in our business journey, in our patient journey, our marketing journey. Every interaction we have with a patient, a millennial patient, whether it is online, whether it is in the client lounge, I don't like the term waiting room, treatment room, consultation room, whatever it is, you're selling. You're selling yourself, the practice, the experience, all of these things. So millennials know when they're being sold, you don't want to be aggressive, you don't want to be pushy, right? We want to build trust. And that goes hand in hand with the relatability aspect as well, because millennials value, let's say, opinions from people that are just like them. Millennials value photos from complete strangers, people they don't know, that are just like them, and reviews from complete strangers, more than, let's say, the provider's credentials. And that's just the reality of the world we live in. So from the relatability standpoint, that's a huge core value. And then the fifth one I like to talk about are experiences, right? So going back to, let's call it the negative stigma of a millennial consumer not being brand loyal. Oh, they're just always trying to find the next cheapest, you know, Groupon deal or whatever it may be. Well, let's take a step back and first of all, think about that. Is that the type of patient we want in our practice anyways? Most of us probably not, right? That's not our ideal customer profile. That's not our ideal avatar. So millennials will spend more money, and I think this is a concept that a lot of us actually need to realize. If they trust, they will get a better experience and a better result from the provider and the practice. And obviously these things are going to fall on the providers effectively, you know, approaching so many different things within the clinic, within the med spa practice, whatever type of business you have, the right way.
That's fascinating. I love the 5 core values. As you were going through them, I almost broke them down into 2 huge buckets, like choices and convenience. My mind was going to, you're right, it's not laziness. I mean, I can still remember, I'm aging myself here, but I can still remember when we had cable TV, and if I wanted to watch a show, I had to be on the couch at 7 p.m. Sunday night. So I didn't have that convenience and choice. It was, if you want to do this, then you have to be here on my time, if you will, is what cable TV was telling me. Now, if you want to watch a show, you can choose whenever you want to do
Yeah.
it. And I think if you grow up in that time, that's what you're accustomed to. So I think maybe in lieu of laziness, we ought to say business owners need to step it up and meet, whether it's technology that made millennials that way or what have you. That's the reality now. It's actually now up to business owners to meet that trend. And then authenticity, relatability, and experiences, that's all very personal, right? It's
Yes.
all, and I don't know exactly what in the history kind of made that, like, hey, this has to be personal to me or something that means something to me. But I just found that fascinating. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, you brought up reviews before and after being very important. I'm curious, from a marketing perspective, if I do want to reach out to a millennial and have them at least come into my practice, what are some things, marketing, social media, what are some things that I ought to be thinking about as a business owner?
Yeah, definitely. And so I'm going to touch on, because we kind of already went into reviews and before and after photos. So let's touch on those two first, and there's probably a third I want to kind of weave in, which actually goes hand in hand with both of them. So to even preface this, so we actually did a consumer analysis survey several years back on the RX photo side of our business with Google. So we paid Google a lot of money to conduct this survey. And we basically surveyed 1,000 millennial consumers who were researching cosmetic treatments online. And two of the questions was, when researching aesthetic providers, what are basically things that influence you the most? And to put it, a long story short and put it at the highest level, basically the millennial consumers all agreed that it was photos and reviews. Those were ranked as the top two. And I believe it was like fourth place was the provider's credentials. So are your credentials important? Absolutely. But I think from the acquisition standpoint, you need to realize that that's not initially what is going to bring them in your practice. I think, selling yourself and your expertise and possibly let's say you charge 30% more than other practices in your local market. That's when those training and expertise and credentials come into play. But when it comes to just their initial research journey in the marketing world, those are two very, very influential things that millennials will use to drive their decision of who am I going to schedule a consultation with. You could not pay me to go somewhere if I did not read patient reviews and if I did not look at photos. And we all know there are so many nightmares of patients that go, they get burned by a laser, whatever it may be. So from that standpoint, let's do reviews first. So if we go into the mind of the millennial, let's say they're younger, 20, so even if we go into Gen Z, because these same concepts are going to apply to the older Gen Z as well, if we want to start talking, 21 to 26, let's say, since millennial starts at 27. Like the first place any of us go to research anything, Google, right? It's a mainstream word, Google it, right? So we go to Google, that's step one, right? So millennials, consumers are typing in Botox, Boca Raton, Florida, whatever it is, right? And because the majority of us practices in this industry, we're local businesses, the majority of patients are probably only going to drive, let's say, max 25 miles to your clinic, right? So everyone's a local business. Because of that, your Google business profile is typically the first place a millennial consumer will land before going to your website, right? Because when you're doing local searches, those local businesses are going to be coming up. So think of your Google business profile, which is what houses your Google reviews, as the smell test that has to be passed first before they even go to your website. And I'm not going to talk a ton about websites today. We all know that you need a website, yes. But I think so often something that can be neglected that can affect your website conversion is simply just your Google reviews. So from the review standpoint, in terms of number of reviews you should have, perception-wise, from a millennial consumer perception, triple digits always builds more trust. So, and that's probably for a lot of us, regardless of age. If we see a practice with 56 reviews versus a practice with 256, very, very different perceptions instantly on who would I probably rather call or schedule a consult with, whatever it may be. When we go to star ratings, once again, I always advise 4.8 or above. That should be your goal top tier goal, but I think as long as you're 4.5 or above, you're okay. Like, you know, and building on that, negative reviews too. Like, I feel this is actually the pushback I get a lot, because I have a whole course I teach on reviews as well, is practices are like, well, I don't want to ask for reviews in my practice because I'm afraid of getting a negative review, right? So they have this fear that's holding them back from asking the patients who love them and would be happy to leave them a review. They use that as like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm afraid. And, you know, fear is a whole other thing. We could talk about that, but that hinders everything, like in business and life. Like, you got to power through the concept of fear. So from a business owner perspective, you have to ask your patients for reviews. There are tons of reputation management softwares out there. There are so many. Whether they're industry specific or not, get one. Or if your EMR software has an integration with one, use it. Like, these are very, very powerful tools that create scalable processes from an internal standpoint in your practice, right? So get technology. A big thing I would also add here is, because we are in the aesthetic world, ensuring that the technology can tailor timing of review requests based on treatments or procedures received. Because as we know in this industry, someone who gets tox or HA filler, that's going to be very different than a surgical patient of when you ask them for a review. If you ask Susan for a review after she just had a breast aug, you may not get a good review because she's probably in a lot of pain and maybe she's regretting her decision or whatever it may be. So technology is your friend, right? I think a lot of people kind of get scared, once again, that fear thing of implementing technology. Technology is everybody's friend. So getting a good reputation management software that's easy to use, and then also just from the internal perspective, asking, like, what is the talk track? Like, are your employees trained on how you're going to ask for reviews? And so perhaps this falls on not just providers in the room, but it also needs to fall on the front desk. So Jenny is checking Susan out. Susan just completed a laser series and her skin is glowing and she's so happy, she's beaming, she's on cloud 9. Front desk person saying, Susan, oh my gosh, your skin looks so good. Like, it's been an honor to treat you. I'm so happy you decided to follow through with it. Like, just having a conversation. Once again, you're building that relationship. Just so you know, in the next, hour or two, let's say you're going to be receiving an email and a text message from our practice kindly asking you to review us on Google. As you can imagine, we're a small local business. The outcomes and the results that we achieve for our patients are the lifeblood of our business. It would mean the world to us if you would review us. If you ask in a genuine, authentic way, and you gave them that phenomenal experience, once again, one of those other core values, and then you make it as easy as possible, convenience, right? All these things tie together. They will do it, right? Are there people out there that will never leave a review? Sure. But because the millennial generation is much more outspoken than other generations, they will leave reviews. And building on that, because they are more outspoken, because aesthetics has become so mainstream, right? It's like getting, from the female perspective, your highlights done, your nails done. Like, you couldn't pay me to not get Botox. No way. Like, I'm not going out in public if my sciatic wrinkles start coming out in my forehead. Heck no, right? It just becomes something that is normal. You cannot live without it, right? Like, it's so true though. Like, no thank you. And even if we start talking about the younger ages, whether they're older Gen Z, younger millennials, and even if they haven't entered into their prime earning years yet, let's say, once they start doing it, it's hard to make them stop. And so consumers, believe it or not, will actually go out of their way to budget specifically for their routine aesthetic treatments. So because they're more outspoken, because it's more mainstream, it's a normal thing to do, right? Millennials, they want to shout it from the rooftop. Social media is another thing we can go into. But from the before and after photo aspect as well, that's something else a lot of practices struggle with, is because their patient says, no, I don't want my photos taken, and then they just stop there. Like, okay, no worries. Well, let's think about this from both the patient perspective and the provider perspective. So from the patient perspective, not only is it going to help build value in what you are trying to educate them on, sell them on, and things like that, but we all have those patients that come in, they get whatever, Sculptra, laser, whatever it is, and because people see themselves in the mirror every day, they're like, well, I don't see a difference, right? I don't see a difference. You guys didn't do anything. I want my money back, or whatever it is. Well, if the practice has been effectively taking photos and can sit down with the patient and be like, actually, let's look at your skin journey over the last 6 months. And we're all visual, and this is a visual industry. When you're looking at photos, you're like, oh my gosh, holy cow, like this provider is right. They've totally changed my skin. So from the patient perspective, you need to have them to build value, credibility, ensure that the patient understands that you have been helping them immensely and things like that, just because we do have those difficult patients. And then from the practice perspective, before and after photos have so much power when it comes to, once again, your marketing efforts, right? And before I move on this, like just a magic word I don't want us to forget about is consents. Like you got to make sure that you have bulletproof consents in the practice too. So just, don't just start go taking photos of anybody and then storing them on your phone camera roll, which is not HIPAA compliant, by the way. So find yourself a HIPAA compliant solution for sure. But just ensuring that you have a process in place for photos, right? So what solution are you going to use to assist with the consistency and the angles? And this is another mistake I see a lot is that injector could have been a phenomenal injector, one of the best in the industry, let's say. But let's say the before and after photos have different lighting, different angles, and things like that. From the consumer standpoint, you don't know that it was a phenomenal result, right? So it may have been the best result, right? But now consumer perception, because this all goes back to how millennials think and transact and what influences them to buy, they can't see that, right? So from the patient perspective, it's great for just building value. It's also great for the initial consultation when it starts, if we want to start talking about increasing your consultation conversions, sitting down, having an iPad and going through other patients, once again, just like them, that were on treatment plans, just like them with similar, Fitzpatrick skin types, just like them, going through and showcasing what you as a provider achieved for other patients just like them, right? And then using that to create buy-in for long-term treatment plans, membership programs, all of these things, because something else, and I could go on forever about this, so to try to keep it short now, I think when it comes to millennial consumers, they typically come in through a gateway treatment, right? So they come in initially interested in, let's say, maybe it's just some type of microdermabrasion or injectables or whatever it may be. Okay, that's great at getting them in. But now you need to use that opportunity to not just be like, okay, you want filler today, we'll do that. Tox, we'll do that. See ya. Like using that 45 minutes or whatever it may be as an opportunity to actually build a comprehensive custom treatment plan. And before and after photos will play a critical role.
Nice. That's great. By the way, we need to do a podcast on fear sometime. I think that'd be fascinating. When you were talking about reviews and triple-digit reviews, I know when I buy on Amazon, for example, if someone has a 4.8 or something, I should say a 4.8 with 50 reviews versus a 4.6 with 600, I'm probably getting the 4.6 because I think that there's less variability of error there. So when you were talking, I was like, yeah, that's really interesting, actually. That was a lot of great advice on everything from before you even get to the website, make sure that if I'm going to Google you, you're there, and the things that you value to get me even in the door. You started touching on this a little bit, so I'd love it if you could expand. So now I've Googled, I've looked at the website, good before and after photos. Also thought it was fascinating that your credentials come forth, I believe you said, which I think speaks to some of these core values, right, that you're talking about. So I'm in the practice. How do I actually buy? And then you touched on some of them, but I'd love it if we could focus a little bit on, okay, I'm a millennial, I'm in your practice. How are you going to get me to buy?
And that's an excellent question. And so let's start at the beginning of let's even go back a step. Let's start talking about a phone call. As simple as that, right? Because so now let's say you did everything right on the online presence side of things. Millennial consumer calls. And we all know training is a necessity in this industry, and unfortunately it's something a lot of practices fall short of, which is so great for you guys because you have an incredible consulting division here at Skytale with literally the experts. So first of all, I couldn't encourage anyone to reach out to Skytale more on that aspect. But if we just talk about that, okay, so that's the next conversion, let's say, that you have to convert them to get them to walk in. So, and I could go for an hour on this. I'm going to keep it very high level so I can actually talk about once they're in the practice. But on the phone call, first of all, using their name, getting their contact information. You will not. I actually mystery shop practices a lot, and I swear, 80% of the time, I kid you not, people still don't get contact information. And they could be the nicest person in the entire world. They're so sweet, but they're just not trained, right? So that falls on whoever is responsible for training and growth, and who has equity in the business. At the end of the day, it all falls on them, leadership down. But getting their contact information, having a follow-up process in place. What does your follow-up process look like? Because going back to, once again, those core values, because they value choices, they may be calling multiple practices, right? And if practice B, let's say, gets their contact information because front desk person is trained compared to practice A, even though she was the nicest person in the entire world to talk to. I'm maybe 30 days out, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I just got a couple paychecks. Let's say I'm, an older Gen Z, younger millennial. I'm ready to go in and spend some money and start getting aesthetic treatments. Well, who am I going to call, right? The practice that's been following up with me consistently the last 30 days, let's say, or the practice who has been radio silent, and then I forget I even called. And the sad thing about this is that practice B may have been, let's say, a less skilled injector or a less skilled provider. And now you just lost that millennial opportunity to someone that was actually less skilled than you just off a phone call. So that's one thing I wanted to address. But now let's say the millennials coming in your practice. Something I preach a lot is, first of all, and this is a term in the marketing world as well, is everything needs to basically provide a consistent brand image, right? So from click to brick is the terminology. So on the click side, right, that's everything online. So those experiences they're getting online, is that click experience going to match the brick experience when they actually walk into your brick and mortar? Does it feel outdated? Are there old magazines, things like that? Do those things make it seem that you're on the cutting edge of aesthetics if some things are outdated? And that's just a design thing, right? Like, these are things that the practice can control and they can fix easily, right? So just from that perspective, like, it needs to be clean. It needs to provide a nice experience. When they're coming in, perhaps they are offered a beverage, whatever it may be. Remembering patients' names as well. Once they come in once, remember their names, greet them with their first name every single time they come in. So from that experience, let's say they're in, because I don't like the term waiting room, client lounge, whatever we want to call it, right? You're always selling, once again. So something I love, and this is actually something that a good friend of mine, who I know is a client of your guys now, Megan Kennedy, one of my favorite people in the entire world, and she does this phenomenal thing where in her practice, she has branded before and after photo booklets everywhere. So when I'm sitting waiting to be seen by the provider, whether it's my first time there or my fifth time there, I can go through a before and after photo booklet of other patients who gave consent for their photos, of course, and see all these incredible results. And now that not just creates an opportunity for buy-in before I'm actually deciding to purchase, but if you're an existing patient, it creates an opportunity to cross-sell and upsell as well. So from the waiting room, but we don't want to use that term, client lounge perspective, just keep in mind that you're always selling. Everything is an opportunity for revenue, in my opinion, and an opportunity to create better experiences and results, clinical results for your patients. So smart TVs, if you have banners, if you have, maybe follow us on social media with the QR code, your branded before and after photo booklets, all of these are great. Personalized touches, which go back to that experience, core value as well. So just remembering that everything is an interaction and an impression that you can never get back. So just making it as personal as possible, bringing them back, and then in the consultation, of course, spending enough time. 15 minutes is not enough time. 45 minutes to an hour is typically what I would say. And using that to listen to them, hear about their skin concerns, address whatever other things that they, may not know are affecting other parts of their skin. And actually, a good friend of mine, and this is something I love. So I have a very good friend. Her name's Katie Martin. She's an injector. She's actually part of the Alpha crew with John Wheeler's company, with Holden Timeless Beauty. And I did a podcast with her a couple of months ago, and I was asking her, grilling her about their consultation process in the practice. And she said something that stuck with me, was before I dive into the consultation and they take a full 60 minutes, before I talk to the patient and ask them what's bothering them, I first say, you have to tell me something about your face you love.
Love that.
And I feel like, and I heard that and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is freaking brilliant. Like, why do not more people do this? Because if we take a step back, it can be a very, I don't want to use the term embarrassing, but somewhat intimidating. Patients are nervous. Who wants to go into a room and start talking about acne scars and how much they despise them or whatever it may be, on the side if they're actually trying to correct something versus be preventative. So having an approach like that where you actually care and the patient feels like you have their best interest at heart, not that you're trying to push things and get more money out of them, right? And I feel like if you approach aesthetics that way and you put education at the forefront of everything, the money will come, right? Using that as an opportunity to build the relationship, create the best possible experience, ensure that millennial patient actually feels like you care, because we will spend more money with providers who care about us, right? And so before and afters, we talked on that, having that process, having an iPad, building a treatment plan, going through photos, educating on the need for medical grade skincare. Skin texture is not going to be fixed by injectables. We have to start mixing in combination therapy approaches, EBD, whatever, retail products that you have in the practice, whether it's private label, whether it's, one of the, many, many medical grade brands we have, they both have great benefits to your practice. But just using that as an opportunity to listen, to educate, to build value, and then don't be overly pushy, right? And just making them, once again, they have to feel like you wholeheartedly 110% care about them. And so going back to just that personalized touch, so a lot of practices do this, a lot of practices don't. So for those of you guys listening, if you're not doing it, this is something you could easily start doing, and I promise it will have a huge impact on your business as well, is keeping patient notes, personalized patient notes every time you see a patient, right? So whether you remember Susan or not, let's say you treat 500 patients, you're not gonna remember everyone, and that's okay, but they don't need to know that, right? So, okay, Susan's planning her wedding. She just got a new puppy. Her mom moved near her. Take 2 seconds out of your time, 20 seconds, whether your assistant does it, whatever, jot it into the patient's record. So 3 months later, when Susan comes back, you can walk in the door and be like, Susan, oh my gosh, it's so great to see you. How was your puppy? How's the wedding? Greeting her with a hug. All of these things that are really simple things that people can do. Yet, while they are simple on the practice side, on the provider side, on the admin side, they have a huge impact on the millennial side of things as well. So, all in all, without to keep babbling on, just make it personal, build that relationship. And there's this super cliche quote a lot of us have heard probably so many times by Maya Angelou, that is, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. All of us have heard it, yes. It really just ends on a powerful note, as that is how you need to think about the millennial generation of consumers, is it's relationships and experiences, absolutely.
Great points. I think I'm going to maybe apply some of these even within Skytale here. That was really good. So what are they? Do you notice any differences when you look at boomers and Gen X and, going down to millennials? Are there any differences in service lines? So what should I be thinking about if I'm a practice and I'm reading the tea leaves here? And as you mentioned, okay, boomers and Gen Xers have already, kind of topped off, if you will. Millennials are coming up. So that, if there is a difference, I would imagine then that the service mix over time, certainly at a macroeconomic level, is going to change. What are you seeing there? So
if we want to start talking about what are millennials attracted to? So I think we're certainly seeing a shift in a more comprehensive approach to aesthetic medicine. So if we talk about the older generations, I don't use that term though, because a lot of our listeners are probably Gen X and boomers. None of us are old.
I resemble that remark.
Age is just a number, you guys. So if we want to talk about Gen X and boomers, obviously given their age, they're going to be usually requiring, unless they started getting aesthetic treatments early on, more aggressive, let's say EBD, maybe they need to go the surgical route, they need a bleph, whatever it is. Now when we move into millennials, the category of treatments, I want to say, is a little bit wider. Let's say only because of innovation, we have a lot more of it now than we did when Gen X was, in their growing prime years, and same with boomers. So obviously we have your gateway treatments we talked about. Okay, so injectables, maybe it's laser hair removal, hydrofacial. I'm not the biggest fan of the hydrofacial device, but people know it, they type it by name, it can bring people in, right? There's a lot of other probably facial devices I would prefer over that. But maybe we can...
A third podcast.
So things that, people are going to search for, right? What's going to bring people in? So using those as gateways, are they going to be your most profitable treatments when we start talking about margins? No. Okay. But it brings them in. Now let's start talking about combination therapy approaches. And I feel that this is the shift that the millennial generation is going towards. However, they still need to be educated on it. If you're not educating them on it, they're not going to do it. Unless, of course, they see some influencer in the space doing Morpheus 8 or whatever it is, and then it drives them in to search for that and things like that. But from the service mixture, you're going to have your basic, let's say, facials and things like that, your gateway treatments, laser hair removal, injectables, and then you're going to have your EBDs, laser skin resurfacing, whatever it may be, things that actually address skin texture and things like that, right? You can only do so much with injectables, and then you need to treat skin texture and things like that, and volume loss, fat loss, all these other things. So from the millennial perspective, if the practice educates them effectively the right way, we're seeing a shift towards that combination therapy approach, right? So they are willing to do multiple treatment modalities, right? So, tox and filler, I feel like that, who cares about that? Everybody does that now. And it's not going to be, a practice's most profitable, treatments anyways. But from the combination therapy approaches, we can build on that, right? So, okay, we just finished, we did some filler, we did some tox. Let's actually start building blocks of your skin. Let's start you on biostimulators, like whether it's Sculptra, let's actually treat the foundation. We're going to go through these series of laser treatments to treat your skin texture. Medical grade skincare, once again, I mean, that's a whole nother opportunity we could talk about, is just skincare. And going through even our clients' financials a lot of the time, I would say most of our med spa clients probably fall under 3 or 5% of gross revenue comes from their retail. And that's a huge opportunity for growth. And that's, once again, another topic. But skincare is another big thing. And actually, there's a statistic out there. I think I got the stat from Derma Concepts, Environ Skincare, from my good friend Candace Noonan. I'd have to go back and figure out what it was. But I believe the stat is if a millennial patient buys at least 3 skincare products from you, there's like a 91% chance that they'll return. It's something around that. It's very high. And the thing is, with millennials, they're going to buy skincare. Whether they buy it from you or they go and they buy things that are non-medical grade and basically, garbage for their skin at Ulta or CVS or whatever it may be. So combination approaches overall, comprehensive approaches to aesthetic medicine, comprehensive treatment plans. And now I think the question a lot of times is, okay, well, how do I get them to be exposed to these other parts of my practice beyond me just sitting down and educating them? Memberships. I'm a huge advocate for membership programs. However, they have to be done the right way. And it can't be something that you decide over the weekend, we're just going to throw together this membership program and hope that it works, because there are a lot of things that you need to be mindful of when building on that, especially if you're going to be offering, let's call it VIP pricing. I don't want to use the word discount, but VIP pricing, we need to be mindful of our costs and things like that as well. So it's something that you need to actually sit down and go through it. But memberships are great because if we go into stats, again, 81% of millennials are highly influenced by some type of membership or loyalty program. I guarantee every millennial has at least 5 memberships that they're a part of, whether it's some type of cheap subscription of streaming services, or whether we want to start talking about beauty and health and wellness. And the cool thing about memberships is they will give exposure to those other avenues of your business. So whether it's beauty banking, whether it is a monthly fee, and there should be contract terms with all of these. I would not advise anyone going month to month unless you've had immense success with it and very low churn. But regardless of the program you develop, let's say you invest in a new piece of capital equipment, right? Incorporating that into your membership program, and perhaps your VIP patients who are already a part of that membership program receive entry-level pricing, or just things that you can do to make your VIP patients feel like they matter, and that they matter more than the non-VIP patients, right? But we don't want the non-VIP patients knowing that, but we kind of do, because we want them to feel left out, right? So, only our VIP patients receive pricing. However, if you're interested in being a part of this, membership program, call our practice, mention it the next time you're in, whatever it may be. But membership programs have a lot of benefits, not just from, revenue streams on a monthly basis, top line revenue growth, all of these things, retention per patient spend, but it's really great for introducing new treatments and procedures, exposing them to new treatments and procedures. When you bring on new investments, new capital investments in the practice, using that as an opportunity. So just from that aspect, I think there's a lot of ways that you can build value and create buy-in for all of your different categories of your aesthetic service mixtures, let's say, when it comes to the millennial perspective.
That's great. I'm curious, follow-up question. Why do millennials care so much about memberships?
So I don't think it's more so the term memberships. I think it's because it makes them feel like they matter, right? Because whether we want to call it a membership program or maybe a VIP program, something that makes them feel like they matter. And also, let's go back to how they think now, too. Because when you look at a membership, there's a monthly cost, let's say. That's typically how some practices out there have annual ones. I'm a bigger fan of monthly, whether it's banking or it's a monthly fee that isn't banked, and they receive, X treatment per month for a complimentary price, let's say. It's all about perceived value. When it comes to perceived value, in the mind of a millennial, basically the perceived benefit has to outweigh what the cost is. So if we kind of go into that equation, the perceived benefit is going to be, let's use a specific example. So let's say I'm super self-conscious about my skin. I have really bad melasma, hyperpigmentation. I have to put on a boatload of makeup every single day because I really despise my skin, let's just say, and it's affecting my self-confidence. And let's say the practice has a membership program. They build out my treatment plan, and then they articulate to me, actually, 90% of our patients are actually a part of this incredible VIP program. We have all the services that are actually in the treatment plan we're recommending to you are a part of this. You could join, there's a 3-month, 6-month commitment, let's say. It's $150 a month. However, you actually receive VIP pricing on all these treatments that we're actually recommending for your treatment plan. And if you're going to commit to this and you want to achieve these skin goals that we've achieved for other patients just like you, this actually saves you money over time. Now they've done everything they can do, the provider can do, right? They've educated to the max, let's say. It falls on, okay, does this give me value? And if the millennial believes it does, they will buy into it. So I think around memberships, it's just, what value is this going to bring? Is this going to improve my life? If it is going to improve my life, whether it's let's say on the skin thing, maybe it's affecting my dating life, my love life, my professional life, all of these things. Like, if I buy into this membership program, I go through this treatment plan, I believe I am going to be so much more confident about myself and feel so much better and perform better in all aspects of life, right? So that's when you have the perceived benefit minus outweighing what the cost is. So I think it's really just about perceived value at the end of the day.
That's great. So now I know how to bring people in. I know how to get them to buy. I know what they're buying. How do I, and you can phrase it one of two ways, how do I not lose a millennial patient, or how do I lose a millennial patient?
Yeah. Let's start with, let's do how do you keep them? And this builds memberships is a great way, okay? Membership programs, I'm a big fan. The reason I love memberships is because it keeps the millennial consumers more active with coming in to seeing you. Even if they don't really need XYZ, and let's not use injectables, because obviously if you're a good injector, you're going to say no when they don't need it, right? But they don't really need microdermabrasion, if they don't really need something, or maybe more simple treatments, but they know that they get that VIP pricing. Like, you know what? I'm just going to go in and get it, spend the money. I have a VIP discount I can apply. They're going to, more often than not, come in more frequently. So they will be more therapeutic with treatments. And building on that, the more times patients are in your practice are just more times that you can use that as an upsell, cross-sell opportunity, or you use that time to continue building the relationship. So whether they've been seeing you for 5 years, they're already super aggressive with their treatment plan, they're spending $15,000 a year, $10,000 a year, whatever that may be, and really there's nothing else to sell to them. Let's say they're just consistently getting treated, just using that as an opportunity to continue building the relationships. And this industry, it's a small industry from the vendor side. We all know each other. It's a very niche industry. But from the in-practice side as well, so actually from the vendor side and in-practice side, it's a relationship-driven industry, honestly, because customer service sells, right? If we just look at brands like Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons, Mandarin Oriental, all of these high-end hotel brands, customer service is at the forefront of everything. And so I think if we can apply those same concepts to our practice, in which cases eventually we can actually probably charge premium pricing for what we're offering and get those margins up a little bit and all of these things, at the end of the day, it's customer service, it's relationships, it's all about that experience. And the good thing about if you do all these things right, you're going to get referrals. Millennials are highly influential consumers. They influence, and I call it the 3 Ps. They influence their parents, their partners, their peers, right? So they're very influential on other generations other than their own. So when it comes to the concept of lifetime value, let's say, a millennial consumer, what is lifetime value? Okay, most of us probably know. What is that patient going to spend in their lifetime as an aesthetic consumer in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years? But with millennials, because they are so influential, I think we also need to include in that lifetime value, how will they generate business for you? Before and after photos will generate business for you. Them leaving you phenomenal reviews will generate business for you. Them referring their mom, their dad, their aunt, their teacher, all these people. I mean, gosh, to my provider, I've referred, I don't even know how many people, probably 20, So they have all these other opportunities for revenue for your practice. And I think that all just boils down into that lifetime value. And then on the topic of why do they leave? Why does anyone leave a restaurant, let's say? Like, what would you say? Why does someone leave a restaurant?
For me, well, my meal is over, but if I never come back to one, is that the question?
Yeah.
It would be poor service.
Mm-hmm.
It would be poor food.
Mm-hmm.
It would be the restaurant doesn't feel clean. I think those would be it. And then obviously the other patrons want to make sure that, they're dressed okay. It's probably a special night. Yeah. It's like you, I'm busy. I never go to restaurants unless it's at a conference or something.
Yep, exactly.
So I think those would be the big ones is, do I feel good coming out of that experience? Mm-hmm. Because just as much as the food, it's the experience, right? Did they treat me right? Was it presented well? Mm-hmm. Did I come out happy in general?
Yeah. And that's the same. And the reason I asked that was because it's the same with not even just millennials, honestly, other generations as well. It all boils down to an experience, right? And when it boils down to experience, whether you had a great experience or a horrible experience, the common denominator between both of those is usually a person. Whether it's food, it's still a person that made the food. Whether it's ambiance, it's a person who chose to have not a great ambiance. Whatever it is, it all boils down to the people component. And there was actually, I need to go back and find this image, but it stuck with me for like 2 years. I follow a ton of different groups on LinkedIn, and there was this, there's like the sales group I follow, and they posted something that was basically a graphic that said there's no B2B or B2C, so no business to business or business to consumer, it's H to H, human to human. And I feel like it stuck with me because that is so relevant and that's so true in other verticals as well, but it's especially true as it relates to medical aesthetics and specifically targeting, acquiring, converting, building trust, treating, and retaining a millennial patient in your practice for the longevity of their aesthetic journey through life, let's say.
Love that. I like the age to age. It's interesting, you know, as we grow, that's one of the things we think about is how do we pass down that DNA of what, you know, Skytale's a firm, but it's made up of humans, and we're dealing with other humans. And how do you pass that on, that passion of why are we even here? And we're here because we think we know that business owners are our heroes and we want to see them succeed, whether it's in consulting or investment banking. So I like that age to age thing. That might be something that I'm getting a lot of stuff from you today that I'm gonna that we're gonna apply here soon, right after this. So if I'm talking to Audrey, the Oracle, what are some future things that we ought to look out for, maybe that are emerging, whether it's in the markets or more specific to this conversation, demographically speaking? What are things that you think we ought to look out for over the next few years?
Yes, definitely. Two things I want to touch on. So the first is wellness. Wellness, age management. Obviously, when we talk about age management, that's typically going to be older than the millennial generation that would kind of reach into Gen X and boomers, but that is an under-tapped market in its own, is just the male generation. So if we back up a step and we just think about wellness in general, right? So in medical aesthetics, we're treating the physical appearance. We're treating body, whether it's surgical, non-surgical, skin, it's physical. It's things we see, right? Now, if we go a step further, a lot of times there could be, or what is the root cause of why this patient is getting such horrible acne and things like that. So if we go beyond that, we're now seeing a shift to combining wellness and aesthetics together. And the thing is, wellness, it's not like it's new. What the wellness vertical, the anti-aging vertical, integrated medicine, functional, that's been growing for years and years and years. I just feel like in the medical aesthetic industry, we kind of had tunnel vision and we didn't see it for a while. And now it's finally kind of trickling in, and we're all seeing the benefits of combining inner beauty, inner health with outer beauty and outer health. So I think we'll definitely start seeing a shift in a transition of medical spas, aesthetic practices, incorporating more of that nutrition-based services. Obviously, you know, semaglutide, Wegovy, all that blew up, and we all know that the lawsuits that were going on with Novo Nordisk and things like that. But that became a huge thing, and the funny thing is it all stemmed from social media. The whole semaglutide revolution, let's call it, and it's been around forever. It all came from social media and then turned into this huge phenomenon of weight loss and things like that. And actually, just on that topic, we're all talking about, you know, the I forget what the term is, but like the semaglutide face, right? Because it's causing people to lose weight so fast that they actually need aesthetic treatments to then like pull their face back up, which of course we don't want. But weight loss is good if you are the right candidate for it, of course. But going back to that, we're definitely going to see a shift towards incorporating the two together. So from a business perspective, it's great at creating additional streams of revenue for your practice, and it could even be a differentiator for you as well. So, you know, maybe your unique value proposition, which can change over the years as you evolve as a business and things like that, is, will we take aesthetic medicine so seriously that we actually do a full, let's say, whether it's DEXA scan, whether it's an in-body analysis, whatever it is, like, you come to us, we're actually going to take your blood. We're going to do all of these things to ensure that what you're doing on the inside is going to assist with what we're going to do on the outside for you. So not only are you creating a more comprehensive approach that's also going to make you more money, let's say, it's going to give the patient a 10x better result too. So we're definitely going to see a shift of the coupling of the two. Obviously, a lot of practices have already done that. For those of you guys who haven't, I would strongly encourage looking into the wellness scope, whether you want to do peptides, nutraceuticals, hormones, all of these things. And then building on wellness, another segment that we'll see, hopefully, moving at a less glacial pace than they are, is men, right? And Ben, you and I were chatting about this before. You know, men only have, I think AmSpa's report says they have like 15%. Like it's 15% of med spa demographics, patient demographics are males and 85% are female. So men, obviously this is a whole nother conversation, but men are slowly trickling in. And Ben, I know you are now a user of aesthetic treatments, which is great because I think your skin looks phenomenal. So whoever did, you did a great job. But it's like sometimes it can be pulling teeth for men to get them to do aesthetic treatments, let's say. And first of all, I will also add, we all know men age better than women. Like, they don't need to start as early as women do. But on the topic of males and that in its own being a very underpenetrated market, I think with the combination of incorporating wellness treatments in your practice, you will naturally attract males. Men go to practices, let's say, because of something they feel, right? So maybe they're struggling with hormones, they're really tired, something's going on with their body, whatever it is. That's typically why a man is going to go somewhere, right? They're not going to go somewhere because they're like, oh, I got a static line in the middle of my forehead, I need to go get Botox. That's not how the male, that we're wired differently. That's not how the male mind thinks. The female mind, very different, right? We want to never get a static wrinkle, right? So very, very different. So I think with the emergence and the combination of wellness and anti-aging and all of these different service categories that practices can implement, you're going to start to attract that undertapped male demographic into your clinic and your practice and your med spa as well. And then from there, you can start bringing them onto aesthetic treatments. And then as it relates to males, something else I would add is men really like seeing things that are tailored to them, right? They don't want to go into a med spa and it feels like it's a place where only women should be, right? That's not how what the male mind. If I'm wrong here, please correct me, Ben, because I'm not a man. But so they like things that are tailored. So maybe you have more of a gender neutral atmosphere in your practice. Even on the memberships topic, there's a couple of clients I'm working with now, creating a membership program specifically for men. It's branded for men. The vernacular is kind of written more for men. Something that's tailored for them so they don't feel less embarrassed about getting it. They're like, oh, this is what guys get. Yeah, sign me up. I want to come in for my monthly IV, blah, blah, blah. And then you can still have your aesthetic treatments on there. You get VIP pricing on injectables and lasers and body sculpting. It's just branded differently, and it's tailored to them. So in terms of things that we'll certainly see, yeah, I would definitely say the wellness incorporation into aesthetics as a combination and comprehensive approach to treating inner and outer beauty and health. And then males, we'll certainly start seeing them pick up aesthetic market share. I think it'll certainly move at a slower pace, but I think with the incorporation of wellness, you can certainly speed that up a little bit in your practice.
That's interesting. I never thought of that. I mean, we have seen wellness coming into medical aesthetics and the combining of them, I should say. Great point. But then the other one I'd never thought about is maybe that is the male gateway, if you will, to use a word you used earlier, is wellness into medical aesthetics, which I think is fascinating. And I also do agree with you that it should be tailored, or we at least maybe feel more comfortable, however you want to put it. As you were saying that, I mean, there's an example in the boardroom's hair salon, right? Is, if I recall, they even have like a barber shop thing outside, the little white, red, blue ones that circle around at the boardroom, and that's highly popular. So maybe something like that we'll see in the future. That's fascinating. I love that. Audrey, is there anything you wanted to touch on that we failed to talk about?
I don't think so. I don't even know how long it's been, but this has been incredibly fun. First of all, thank you for having me, Ben. If I could end on any note, I like ending on positive notes. I would just say it's for all of us in this industry, for all of us listening to this podcast, like, we're in one of the most exciting times to be a part of the medical aesthetic industry. I think all of us, sometimes we can get so consumed in the fast pace of all of these things. And obviously, every 6 months there's another new product, new device. It's a very busy industry. There's so much going on. There's so much innovation. And, we're in a consolidation phase now, so we have a lot of investment money coming into the industry. I think sometimes we just need to take a step back for a minute. And the term I like to use is, first of all, I just feel blessed to be in this industry. Like, every morning when I wake up, I could not be more grateful and feel more fortunate and blessed to be a part of the medical aesthetic industry. So I think a lot of us can get really stressed from day-to-day things, whether it's operating our business, whatever it may be. And I think sometimes we just all need to be really grateful of we are in one of the most exciting times in the medical aesthetic industry. And there are people that are crawling up cliffs to try to break into this industry. So to end on a positive note, I just want to say how blessed and grateful I am to feel or to be in this industry, grateful to obviously be on this podcast with you, Ben. I just think all of us sometimes we just need to take a step back, a deep breath, and be like, wow, I feel so blessed to be in this industry. That's how all of us should feel, because it's only up from here, and we are all in an incredible spot for whether it's opening a practice, whether we've been in business, we're in exit stage, or we're a vendor. It doesn't matter. Like, it's a really incredible time for medical aesthetics, and I'm just so excited to see how the industry grows and evolves over the next 5 to 10 years, truly.
That's a great way to end it. You know, I'm smiling because we talk about that here. Like, how fun is it, and how rare is it, by the way, that you come into a space that's growing as fast as it's growing, that if you think about the business owners in the space, that's another exciting thing. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, I have a right now, she's 7 years old, Celeste, and I bring her to things because it's so fun seeing the leaders in the space, and I tell them all the time, they're trailblazers. I mean, You talked about consolidation happening today. So it's like they're the trailblazers in the space. So we're early enough on to where we get to experience, like, maybe not version 0, but maybe version 1. And from a patient perspective, how many places in the medical space do people actually want to go?
Exactly.
And they come out feeling super excited, better about themselves? I agree with you completely. We all here feel extremely blessed as well to be able to service the people that we service. It's such a fun space. And Audrey, you know, also working with people like you, I know I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. I was super excited just picturing you getting on the plane today. So thank you really for making the effort. If someone wants to get a hold of you, do you want to share your contact information,
Sure.
how to get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. So from an email perspective, it's aneff@patientnow.com. I'm very responsive to email. From the social media side, the 2 outlets I'm active on are LinkedIn and Instagram. So you can search my name on LinkedIn. On Instagram, it's at Audrey Neff _. But other than that, email. I'm not going to give out my mobile number on a public platform. I have done that before on accident. It was not good. Email aneff@patientnow.com. For anyone that is interested in learning more about PatientNow or RX Photo, of course, you can just go to our site. But LinkedIn or Instagram would be my social platforms of choice. So.
Thank you. I think everyone's already following you anyway, but it's funny. I actually very recently, for the first time, accidentally gave out my mobile number. And in the middle of it, I was thinking, why am I doing this? Yeah. But then you can't stop.
No.
So I did it. So we'll see what happens. Thank you so much for coming on, Audrey. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Hope you got some good nuggets from today. And we'd love it if you subscribe to our podcast. Thank you. And until next time.